when you understand the knowledge of these books, then the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra becomes even better. Because then you realize this is actually the name of God and He's there. Okay, so are there any short questions, 5 last minutes before we do a little more chanting and then eating? Any questions?
In the history we have so much bad experience about when there is a God-centered society.
But there cannot have been a God-centered society then if you have bad experience with it. Because if God is actually in the center, everybody is blissful. So if people in your society become transcendently blissful, then you have created a God-centered society. But if your people are miserable and don't have any knowledge about how to reach God in their daily life, how can you have a God-centered society just because you have a big block that's called a church? A big building, the church! That's not a God-centered society where everybody's trying to get more power. No, that's a church-centered society. That's not God. The Christian church or the churches nowadays don't necessarily represent God, even though they think they are. Because their knowledge was lost. The Christian tradition, their knowledge was lost very few hundred years after Christ. And the whole knowledge was destroyed. But that's a very controversial thing to talk about. But the Krishna consciousness movement has the original knowledge still intact, and therefore it's still powerful. That's the difference. If you don't have a chain of teachers going all the way back to God that you can actually trace, you cannot have any transcendental knowledge, and you cannot have a God-centered society, even though you claim to. So the test of a God-centered society is that each individual is actually happy. Transcendentally happy and satisfied. And when that society is a fact, God will make sure that there is no poverty in such a society. So that means that there has not recently been any real God-centered society. At least those you want to refer to as bad cannot be God-centered, right? Because if God is actually there, as we know, then you become blissful, right? Anybody who has tried Krishna consciousness knows that if God is in the center, you become blissful. So, if you're not blissful, that means God is not in the center. You're in the center. But that is all based on bad knowledge, wrong knowledge. So that's why we have to replace our material knowledge with transcendental knowledge. Very simple. So, I think it's nearing the time for the deities. There is a sermon on the altar, and we will sing a little bit. And after that, there will be a little bit of eating, transcendental food offered to the Lord, and also that is spiritual because it is food. There's no meat in it. There's no pungency like onions and garlic like that. Offered to the Lord, and then we take that, and it's also purifying. Of course, if you eat yourself to death, that's another thing, but it's a purifying thing. We recommend that you eat not too much, but moderately. Now you can eat as much as you want. Okay? He does not look satisfied with that. He wants you to eat a lot. Okay, good. So, anything else before we start? No? Okay, so we chant a little bit. And I would like everybody to chant along and dance if you like. To the kirtan, we will chant for as long as he does he does an artik. It takes about between 10 and 20 minutes depending on how quick he does it. But in the meantime we chant for the deities so they can hear the Maha Mantra also. Thank you very much. And all glories to Sri Guru Auranga. And have a nice transcendental life. Hare Krishna.